The Sacred Forest of the Stream Water, Part 1. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. The sacred forest of the stream water began to wake up. A little frozen by the prevailing cold, two members of the group, Don Uriel, Paloma, with several months of pregnancy, and Agustin, her husband, initiated activities after giving at home the last instructions to their children, Vicente and Ignacio, who would be going a little later to their junior high school, located only 2 blocks away. After arriving to Los Colomos forest, the couple briefly prayed before a green elder, which is an imposing tree located in its most sacred core. Afterwards, Paloma and Agustin started their walk in a rush just when the first rays of the sun appeared behind the high tops of the forest trees. It was an important issue to hurry and avoid the peculiar glances towards their white clothes and red stripes on their heads from the first early risers who would appear soon to exercise in the forest. This special place was in an imminent danger to lose still more of its already reduced territory to the hands of the unquenchable voracity of developers of exclusive neighborhoods, for whom the forest of Los Colomos was only one more opportunity for personal profit. In order to be of assistance to Los Colomos, we prayed constantly to our Mother Mary of Zapopan, also known affectionately to the inhabitants of Guadalajara city as La Zapopana or La Generala. As a result, we asked her to give us light to help the forest in the best possible way, in order to be of assistance to Los Colomos. As she always does, our mother answered our prayers. I remember one day after waking up, Paloma and I were very surprised when we found ourselves speaking spontaneously about the forest and agreeing on the same strategy to help it. Surely, our dear Generala had deposited in our hearts these intuitions while we slept. Once our perceptions were clear, we concluded that the best way to protect the forest was through a work of spiritual ecology aimed for the establishment and consolidation of an energetic belt of protection for the forest. And this would be only possible by walking ritually and in complete silence, whichever times were necessary, around its outer periphery, until we could perceive certain energy materially circulating around it. The peripheral walks, the first stage. As a rudimentary strategy to start our work, we decided that the start-up point for all the walks would always be the green elder. To this site, we would return at the end of the enormous peripheral route that would need, according to what we could verify, at least 2 different journeys of 2 hours of walk for its conclusion. At that specific point, we initiated the forest route, walking in a path from left to right and in the same direction of the pointers of the clock. We soon found out that the peripheral route was sinuous and slippery and would take us from top to bottom of several hills, climbing steep walls sometimes. it also became evident to us that the central section of the forest, or first section, was limited by the back gardens of luxurious residences and by the streets of the neighborhoods that bordered it. Except for some other areas where the forest was neighboring with public parks or sports centers, schools, malls, or, in rare occasions, open fields, which we were afraid had belonged in some historical past to the forest itself, being populated by numerous trees now almost extinct. A very noticeable characteristic of our ceremonial work in Los Colomos was the gradual sensation of the acceptance of the forest of the spring water towards us, as well as its loving protection during all our journeys. It united us and still unites us with the sacred forest of the stream water, an immense love to its fauna and its flora, love to its sacred spaces, to the purity and healing properties of its stream water, and to their guardians. Moreover, repeating the words of our little Ignacio, love to their good spirits that we are certain overwhelm with blessings on a daily basis everybody that visits its sacred spaces with respect and a desire to develop a healthy mind on a healthy body. We did not anticipate it that more sweaty days and circuits of at least 2 journeys with a minimum of 2 hours of ritual walk would have to happen to complete our task. In a beautiful day of Pentecosts, in which Paloma and I were singing in Mother Mary's sacred shrine and under her feet, our beloved Lady of Zapopan sent us a message to our hearts that we should work harder in the forest of Los Colomos. Our Heavenly Mother enjoys riddles, I thought immediately, because why is she asking us to work harder at Los Colomos if this is precisely what we have been doing in the last months? Although it was evident that somehow we had completed our work in the peripheral circuit, Paloma had the feeling that something was missing and that the work of the sacred forest of the stream water was not finished, and furthermore, it was only in its beginning stage. However, the question was still in the air: why our dear Zapopana requested the increasing of the work in the circuit that we abundantly walk already? We decided then to let a prudent time pass away and to pray to ask for inner silence so we could hear the solution inside our hearts. The solution. Friday afternoon, our small warriors, Vicente and Ignacio, soon reminded us at home of our promise to take them to ride the horses of Los Colomos as soon as the week ended. Thus it happened, and Saturday morning we made a formal appearance in the horses of Los Colomos, which are always stationed on the bed of a dry and sandy river affluent by the entrance of the forest that is located by Patria Avenue. When we started our ride in the horses along with our small boys in the excursion, I heard Paloma's yell, "Look, Agustin!" When turning around to my right, and a little up, I could see what I should have seen before: the wood signboard that indicated the entrance to another section of the forest, known as Colomos 2, that borders a great section of Patria Avenue and the surrounding lots of the Lomas del Valle neighborhood. That was the solution of the riddle. It was evident that there was another section of the forest that we did not know at all. Riding on a horse by the periphery of this new section to know its characteristics made a lot of sense, and with the help of the guides of the horses, which agreed with no problem to modify a little the route so we could ride through the periphery of that new section, and even refused to accept a surcharge I offered for this change, they gave us kind-heartedly a half an hour more than the normal duration of their services. When crossing by the outside of the periphery of this second section of the sacred forest, I understood the reason why our beloved Mother Mary and Lady of Zapopan requested that we should work harder in Los Colomos forest. A new section existed that we had to walk ritually. It was Colomos 2. And not only that, but once we walked this section enough and its peripheral energy awakened, it was necessary to unite its energetic power with the energetic power of the first section of Colomos 1. In order to accomplish this, we needed to walk the two sections, Colomos 1 and Colomos 2, like a single section, to be able to link, so to speak, the peripheral energy of the whole forest. If we managed to accomplish this feat, our deed sacred forest of the stream water would be protected against urban intrusions and institutional negligence, and what is more important, its good spirits would remain in the forest. Riding in our horses, I explained my perceptions to Paloma, who listened with attention and agreed with the head in approval. After I finished my explanations, Paloma had another and more important explanation for me. Looking at me in the eyes, she only turned her head around to point our small warriors Vicente and Ignacio, who were joyfully chatting with their horses, and who were the reason why we found a solution to the riddle. It never ceased to impress me the perennial existence of our Heavenly Father in the infantile innocence. Everything was crystal clear when we returned the horses to the point of departure. The characteristics of this new section of the forest did not seem to be too irregular as the first section, and could be walked easier, perhaps even in a single journey of 2 or 2 hours and a half average. Ignacio and Vicente gave the final touch to the moment when, embracing their horses without fear, began to give instructions to the new children waiting for a ride on how to mount them and how to take care of them. This concluded a beautiful day in which Mother Mary was always in our thoughts. The peripheral walks, the second stage. The incorporation precisely on those days of Samuel and Tania to our newly formed group Don Uriel could not be more opportune. They gladly joined to the cause of our work in Los Colomos, even requesting from us to put a date to start with the second stage of the peripheral walks. This was not difficult, and we fixed as the start date for the second stage of our work in the sacred forest of the spring water, the upcoming October 12th, to dedicate our work in honor of our dear Mother Mary, Our Lady of Zapopan, who has her religious celebration in this particular date. The expected day arrived, and we merged with enthusiasm into the final part of the sacred pilgrimage or romeria that takes place October the 12th, escorting our mother to her shrine. Once inside the basilica, we prayed at her feet and before her sacred image to request help and protection for our work in the forest of Los Colomos. Afterwards, we left her shrine and direct ourselves towards the lateral avenue that connects the basilica with the forest of Los Colomos and initiated our walk towards the sacred forest. Since it was the 12th day of the month, a feminine date, Paloma would lead in this occasion the ceremonial walk, followed by Samuel, Tania, and myself closing the column. This was a particularly auspicious day for the beginning of the second stage, since the energy of the Zapopana flowed generous from the basilica and in all directions, propagated by the human stream that arrived and left constantly from her shrine. Our group, having participated that day in the end of the romeria, surely would take in a spontaneous and natural way a part from this energy to the forest of Los Colomos for its benefit and protection. After crossing with the utmost care the traffic-loaded Patria Avenue, the group Don Uriel set up course to the central part of the sacred forest to perform at the base of its green elder a prayer asking for permission and protection for the accomplishment of our ceremonial long walk in the section known as Los Colomos II. This would start the second stage of our work. Immediately afterwards, the group, commanded by Paloma, walked swiftly towards the new section that we reached after 20 minutes from the core of the forest. Samuel and Tania adapted gradually to the peculiar and curious stares of the visitors passing by that found our white clothes with red stripes in the head and our martial and quiet march of one in a row quite peculiar. Once surpassed the entrance of the new section, Paloma rushed the walking pace to move away of the more populated zones of the park and began our peripheral walk on this new route, which compared to the first section was more or less flat, but as interesting as the last one. Curiously, I noticed that Paloma sometimes diminished the pace during some minutes to accelerate it later. Sometimes we did not seem to touch the ground, moving very swiftly, whereas others we walked with considerable slowness, as if something delayed our advance. In a given moment, when we had been walking for at least 1 hour and 15 minutes and were almost reaching the first half of the route at the far end of its northern side, Samuel diminished sensibly its steps until almost dragging materially his feet. Paloma immediately detected Samuel's struggles to advance and stopped the march. We all surrounded Samuel, who was pale, dizzy, and with an upset stomach. Paloma, having experienced those situations in the past and with good intuition, she soon found a special spot at a distance and took us walking at about 30 meters away to a clear spot in a beautiful and thick zone of the forest, out of sight from the people passing by. Afterwards, Paloma proceeded immediately to give Samuel the necessary aid, and with great speed, Paloma soaked a handkerchief with a little water that we took earlier from the forest public fountains and which she carried in a small canteen. She pressed it against Samuel's neck, who immediately accused an enormous relief and little by little recovered its color and composure. Immediately afterwards, she applied the humid handkerchief in his forehead and gave him later to drink a few sips of water. Samuel, seated in the ground on a fresh spot, surrounded by trees, had almost recovered completely, and at the same moment, a piercing silence surrounded the forest. Perceiving this event, Paloma formed quickly an energetic circle in which we took each other from the hands, man, women, to stabilize our energy, and immediately afterwards she took the right index to her ear to ask us to listen to the quiet message of the sacred forest. The strange silence continued because it was not possible to listen to absolutely anything. After about 5 minutes, we began to listen gradually the natural sounds of the forest first and the muffled voices of visitors at the distance. Once the silence dissolved, Paloma requested consensus from us on the course of action to follow based on the quiet message of the forest. On an inexplicable way, we all turned around to see Tanya, convinced that the spirit of the forest selected her to transmit its silent words to us. Tanya did not show surprise at all to our inquisitive but respectful stares and simply affirmed, smiling, "Our dear forest wants us to stop for the day and rest." To which Samuel, with all naturalness, added, "It wants that before going to rest, we deposit in this special place the energy that we have transported so far and recapture it from here in another day when we continue our work in the near future." Paloma and I turned around to see each other very satisfied and thankful with our Mother of Zapopan that sent us two perceptive sacred warriors to enlarge the roles of the group Don Uriel. Guided by Paloma, we finished our final prayer, asking the forest to preserve the energy we transported in that special place. Then, a fresh, surprising and strong wind lowered on us, rocking the trees that surrounded us in a sympathetic dance that concluded our journey of the day. Silent knowledge. In our following group meeting that took place Wednesday at 7 o'clock in the afternoon, and after the usual greetings, we initiated the confirmation of our ritual circle, setting up the sacred elements of the two main traditions that constitute the Mexican nation with efficiency and respect. Once finished our ritual entrance to the sacred circle, we decided to pray with fervor, asking for light and insight, considering the recent events that took place when we started our second stage in the sacred forest of the stream water. After praying with fervor a rosary to our Mother Mary of Zapopan, we decided to make a group meditation without a preconceived subject or set thought, simply with the aim to enter within our own hearts and from there to look for silence and inspiration. The procedure gave us good results because when coming back from our meditation, each one of us could extract from our inner being a piece of the puzzle we needed to decode the meaning of what transpired at Los Colomos forest in our last walk. Paloma initiated the conversation. You know, I saw a radiance of white light in different places during my meditation, she commented. I perceived emanations of energy in several different places, but separated from each other, I added. Next, Tanya took part. I was frightened a lot at the beginning of my meditation because I saw with certain clarity something like thick gray blocks and other black and very dense blocks in some parts of my field of vision. Samuel completed the group report. It is very strange because I, instead of seeing something, rather had a strange sensation of a circular movement that sometimes was constant and sometimes almost non-existent, like in a slow motion. Once Samuel finished its description, we all remained in silence spontaneously for several minutes. Suddenly, the sacred fire that we have ignited increased its intensity sensibly and emitted a sonorous hiss, and next, a smooth but sensible flow of fresh energy traveled our ritual circle in a circular motion from left to right as an unmistakable signal that both an explanation and a strategy existed within ourselves. What happened next was a cataract of intuitive perceptions emitted by everyone without any struggling. As a result, we elaborated a group strategy for our future work. Our group, Don Uriel, through this meditation found that what happened in Los Colomos 2 on October the 12th, and that day, the numerous pilgrims that visited the forest after being with their dear mother at her shrine produced a small but perceptible movement on the accumulated energetic garbage in the inactive and dirty energetic circle that surrounds the periphery of the sacred section of the sacred forest of the stream water, known as Colomos II. The naive and honest presence of our group, along with that spiritual energy distributed generously from the basilica towards Los Colomos, caused the illness of Samuel. A part of that energetic garbage in movement crashed frontally in his body, hitting his own energy as well as the energy of our group. Furthermore, our group perceptions during that meditation that we described as light, darkness, energy, and movement existed in the environment of Los Colomos too, as chunks of light on one side and of energetic garbage on the other. Moreover, due to being stored here and there, these elements started to move in their periphery against our initial perception. The work had initiated with good omens because at least some peripheral energy had been set up into motion, and this could lead to the cleansing and creating of an energetic circle of protection in the periphery of Los Colomos too. Nevertheless, it would be necessary to act with caution and intelligence to avoid an impact again from the accumulated energetic garbage existent in the periphery. To address this challenge, a work strategy was set up. It consisted on walking ceremonially while praying with fervor to ask for the protection of our Mother Mary of Zapopan and the aid of the guardian of the forest, especially In those sections in where we perceived that our steps became slower and the advance difficult due precisely to the energetic garbage by which we were journeying. The prayer, we were sure, would be the spiritual dissolvent that would carry out the necessary cleansing. To achieve this, many ceremonial walks would be necessary encircling the periphery of Los Colomos too, until we could perceive some type of signal that we knew would have to arrive at some time, indicating us that the energetic circle would be clean of dirt. We decided consequently to carry out our walks of a feminine nature every 12th day of the month, and our walks of a masculine nature the 21st day of every month. The walks would be led according to the case by Paloma and Tanya or Samuel and myself. Ora et labora. Surrounding the green elder of the central section of Los Colomos forest, we initiated very early the conclusion of the first ceremonial walk around the well-known section of Los Colomos II. It was October the 21st at 6 in the morning. The temperature was low and the cold very intense. We dedicated our work to our Mother Mary of Zapopan, requesting her protection, and initiated promptly the journey that would take us to the special place where we deposited the energy carried away in the previous walk. After almost 1 hour and a half of silent walk, we arrived at our destiny in a different level of conscience and with a certain degree of inner silence. Samuel, our guide in that walk, with great dominion, proceeded quickly to form a circle, alternating men and women to balance our feminine and masculine energies, and asked us to take ourselves by the hands in a ritual fashion. And after a brief silence, he affirmed with a voice flickering by the emotion, "We respectfully ask of the spirit of the place to allow us to recover the energy that we have deposited in this place and to take it around this sacred forest for its protection and in benefit of all its inhabitants. May our journey be the representation of our return to the sacred incarnated by nature, creation of God for us who live in a city that turns human beings into machines. May this sacred earth of the forest nourish us. May its free and fresh air inspire us. May the fire of its spiritual energy illuminate the darkness in our minds and awaken our hearts, and may the water of its underground and sacred stream purify us. Our motivation is pure and does not seek any personal benefit. We only look for the inner satisfaction of a work well done in favor of our brothers and sisters of the forest and the city. May our humble work contribute to awaken the energy of light stored in this sacred place for the protection of our dear sacred forest of the stream water, creation of God and heritage of our city." Immediately afterwards, we raised our hands together at the level of the waist, following the silent instructions of Samuel, and moved our circle, going in a circular motion in the same spot and from left to right during 7 times in a row. Then we lowered our hands united underneath the waist, and we quickly raised them, still united, towards the blue sky. At that precise moment, a strong wind rocked the tops of the trees that surrounded us. With smiles of satisfaction and in complete silence, we formed our column with Samuel, Paloma, Agustin, and Tania, closing the walking group. With firm and determined steps, we marched, headed for the peripheral zone of the forest to complete our second part of the route. The wise invocation made by Samuel to the spirit of the place produced in all of us a mesmerizing effect, because our walking turned fluid and synchronized, and we reached soon the north end of Colomos too, and started the return by its enormous and peripheral border. Although I could not overhear it, I knew we were all praying fervently, and this contributed to the regular pace of Samuel at the front of our walk. However, we noticed that Samuel was hesitating for some instants and on the verge of stopping the march. The cause of this was that ahead there was a section densely forested and neighboring with Patria Avenue, whose contamination from motor vehicles contributed to form in that segment a species of energetic garbage knot in where the energy was blocked. Samuel initiated a series of deep breathings intended to fight the nausea and dizziness that he may be feeling in that zone of energetic garbage. I began to feel a little heat and stupor myself, and considered a good idea to imitate the deep breathings that Samuel had just started. Soon we all synchronized our breathings with Samuel's, and our steps turned straight forward, and after some minutes our breathing became normal again. Next, Samuel adopted a slow but firm pace that I can only imperfectly describe like a prayer walk, and in which we all, on an intuitive way, increase our praying fervor. On a surprising but quite timely way, Samuel raised its left arm in the direction of the Zapopan Basilica, because he knew that we all were praying with fervor to indicate that we had to elevate our hearts to the Zapopana, asking for her intervention. After this mark, we all raised the left arm in direction of the Basilica in signal of receipt of the indication of Samuel. Once we received and executed his message, our guide lowered down its arm, which we imitated. A few minutes later, our march turned with very great pace from slow, difficult into fluid and synchronized. We had managed to go across that energetic stumbling block, and what is more important, we knew now what to do in the future in similar situations, thanks to the surprising ability of our guide. Half an hour later, we arrived at the exit of the second section of the forest of Los Colomos, leaving behind its peripheral zone to go towards our departure point in the central part of the forest to conclude there the ceremonial walk. Almost 2.5 hours after our departure, we arrived again, tired but happy, to present our respects to the Green Elder. It was Tania's turn in this occasion to say a brief prayer of gratefulness to the sacred forest of the stream water and to our Mother of Zapopan by the protection received this day. One by one, we were saying our goodbyes to the forest, promising to return to work for its protection the next 12th of November. When leaving the place in silence, a smooth but refreshing breeze walked with us for some moments.